Hey guys, tonight we tumble down a slippery cloud into a story so dull, so bureaucratically divine, it might actually put you under faster than Dionysus after a wine tasting. You're perched somewhere between heaven and humidity, staring up at the sky as sunlight pierces through vapor, and there it is, a rainbow, beautiful, brief, and suspiciously unbranded. And that's the problem, because somewhere on Olympus, Hermes, the wing-sandaled god of commerce, mischief, and unprompted side hustles is squinting at that rainbow and muttering, "You know, I could slap my name on that." You're about to follow him, clipboard in hand, into one of the least thrilling myths ever whispered through Mount Helicon's grapevines. The story of how Hermes tried to trademark the rainbow. Yes, really. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far these little bedtime expeditions travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You catch Hermes on a ledge just east of the Ambrosia Buffet, hair tousled, tunic rumpled, looking like a tech startup founder who just woke up with an idea and way too much free divine authority. He watches the arc of color split the mist and mutters, "Linear refraction through particulate moisture, but sexy." Then he flips a coin not for luck, but because that's how Hermes punctuates genius. You trail him as he skates through Olympus, parchment flapping in one hand, stylus in the other, mumbling about vertical integration, brand ownership, and color-based monetization streams. It's barely dawn, and he's already plotting to take the rainbow public on Mount Nasdaq. The halls of Olympus hum faintly. Most gods are still snoozing, lulled by last night's thunderous wine argument between Ares and Artemis. A centaur snores in the hallway. A muse is face down in a lyre. And Hermes is sprinting between cloud pillars, searching for Zeus, not because he needs permission, but because there's a loophole in divine protocol. If Zeus yawns at a proposal and doesn't object within 7 celestial minutes, it auto-approves. Historically, that's how Hermes got Tuesday, and socks. But this rainbow, it's personal. The light, the shape, the way mortals look up in open-mouthed awe. He's seen the way humans react. They chase rainbows. They paint them. They even tattoo them on their ankles next to infinity signs and sea turtles. Hermes wants in, and this is where it gets quietly tragic. Hermes genuinely thinks no one's thought of it before. Spoiler alert, someone has. Her name is Iris, and she's not only the rainbow's delivery system, she's the literal goddess of the rainbow, daughter of Thomas and Electra, winged, vivid, utterly unimpressed by intellectual property theft. But Hermes doesn't know that yet. He's too busy sketching out the early drafts of his brand. Bottom. Underneath the mock-up, he's written, technically visible, emotionally resonant, monetizable. He pauses, grins, and draws a little lightning bolt for flair. He hasn't been this jazzed since he convinced mortals to invent the receipt. Historians still argue whether Hermes' obsession with trademarks began before or after his sandal endorsement deal. One fringe theory suggests he once tried to patent the concept of sneezing, until Hera reminded him she invented allergic reactions during a bad date with a cedar tree. Still, rainbow ownership hits different. Maybe it's the aesthetic. Maybe it's the thought of some mortal writing a poem about his spectral arc and tagging it with his divine handle. So you follow him down the cloud stairs as he mutters, "Iris is fast, but I'm faster. All I need is the signature from the top floor." A mortal might think that Olympus is a place of drama, betrayal, and epic war chants. But what they don't realize is that the most brutal battles are waged in triplicate forms and whispered loopholes. Hermes, of course, doesn't believe in waiting. You blink, and he's already bypassed Apollo's corridor, elbowed a satyr out of the way near Hera's bathhouse, and slide-tackled a bored oracle just for being in his path. A nearby statue of Hestia rolls its eyes. The rainbow, meanwhile, still glows in the distance. It's early, quiet. Golden dew clings through the clouds. A nymph yawns as she waves a feathered fan over the official Hall of Petitions, where Hermes plans to break in not because it's illegal, but because it's funnier that way. And just as he's about to slip the scroll into Zeus's golden inbox, Just as the ink is still drying on his rainbow trademark request, he hears the faint, unmistakable flutter of wings behind him. Iris. She's here, and she's holding a very wet goblet of divine nectar, her face half livid, half exhausted, and entirely unamused. Welcome to the storm before the bureaucratic storm. You freeze, parchment still in Hermes' hand, ink catching the morning light like a glint of guilt. Behind him, Iris hovers midair, wings trembling slightly not from fear, but from the sheer effort of not dumping her goblet of nectar directly onto Hermes' overconfident curls. She's wearing the classic mid-flight expression of someone who hasn't had her sky paths tampered with since the Trojan War. And now here's Hermes, scribbling claims on her atmospheric highway like it's open mic night. Is that what I think it is? She asks, voice crisp as frost on ambrosia. Hermes doesn't turn around. Depends. If you think it's a revolutionary shift in ownership over non-solid light formations, then yes. If you think it's a love poem, also yes. She lands beside him with the quiet fury of a woman who's been personally delivering messages between gods and mortals since before the concept of news. Her eyes flick to the scroll. Hermes, bless him, tries to talk first. Look, I get it. You're colorful. But this is more of a branding opportunity than a divine heritage issue. She glares. Okay, it's also a divine heritage issue. You step back, carefully. Because what's about to unfold isn't just a turf war. It's the ancient Greek equivalent of a cease and desist letter served by a winged lawsuit. Iris crosses her arms. You think mortals worship the rainbow because it's yours? Hermes raises one brow. I think mortals associate wonder with visibility, and I'm highly visible. You should see my sandals. You'd laugh. But even the nearby satyr statue looks nervous. See, here's the thing. No one tells you about Hermes. For all his charm and quick wit, he's got the impulse control of a toddler with a liar and a god complex. He sees something beautiful, he wants to own it. He sees something useful, he wants to sell it. And if it's both, well, then he wants to turn it into a franchise. This isn't the first time he's tried to claim a celestial phenomenon. Historians still argue whether it was Hermes or Prometheus who first filed paperwork for the flicker of distant fire, an ancient phenomenon. Mortals eventually renamed lightning bugs. Either way, Hermes wrote a jingle for it. But rainbows, that's sacred Iris turf. And she's got ancient precedent, a signed cloud clause, and possibly a backup army of weather spirits who really don't like having their gradients commercialized. Still, Hermes presses his luck. He steps closer, gesturing expansively at the rainbow still arcing in the sky. I mean, think about it. We put a little symbol on the bottom curve, something minimal, maybe a wing, maybe a lowercase 8. Mortals will go nuts. We start with murals, then limited edition vases, themed temples, maybe even holographic amphorae. Holographic what? She snaps. Just a term I'm testing. You're impossible. He flashes a grin. That's what they said before I trademarked the messenger title. You squint. That's not even technically true. Hermes inherited the job after stealing a tortoise and repurposing it into a lyre. But now isn't the time for myth corrections. Iris turns her gaze skyward, as if hoping Zeus is watching and will smite Hermes with a lightning bolt, just a small one. Enough to scorch the scroll and maybe singe one sandal. But no thunder comes, just the steady pulsing of rainbow light and the distant yawn of a waking god. And here's where the problem deepens. Iris can't exactly punch Hermes. He's technically her co-worker. They've both delivered messages between gods and mortals. They've even coordinated divine logistics like that. Time they teamed up to reroute all prayers about lost goats. Fringe scholars suggest this was how the modern missing pet shrine was born. Instead, she plays the long game. She lowers her voice, dangerously calm. Hermes, rainbows aren't yours. They're not even mine. They're physics. He shrugs. Physics can be branded. Rainbows aren't a product. They're a promise. That hits harder than she expects. Hermes flinches, just a bit. You catch it. He doesn't reply, because deep down, under the stylus-wielding swagger and cloud-charming schemes, he knows rainbows have always been more than color and curve. Mortals saw them as bridges, omens, even divine apologies. The ancient Babylonians believed rainbows were battle bows of the gods, hung in the sky after a storm to promise peace. Irish myths tied them to buried gold, and to sailors. They meant shifts in weather, mood, and mercy. But Hermes can't help himself. He clears his throat. Okay, let's say don't file the scroll. Let's say I leave the rainbow untouched. Hypothetically, could I rent it? You want to rent atmospheric light? Short-term lease. Sundays only. Throw in a cloud-flavored scent and maybe call it Herm Mist. Iris closes her eyes, breathes in, counts to 12, which is exactly how many minor gods she's considering bribing to curse his sandals with mildew. Just then, a scroll falls from the sky with a soft thump. It's from Zeus. 3 words, written in lightning-charred ink. Don't involve me. You exhale. Because this is only going to escalate, Hermes stares at Zeus's 3-word dismissal like it's a sacred riddle, then pockets the scroll with a shrug. Well, he says, that's not a no. You glance over at Iris, who's still glaring with the precision of someone who's been professionally airborne for thousands of years. Her wings twitch in irritation. She doesn't blink. You suspect she hasn't blinked since the Minoan civilization collapsed. Let me explain something to you. Hermes, she says with frightening calm, stepping forward until they're nose to nose. Rainbows aren't part of your startup package. They aren't available for brand collaboration. You can't sponsor a refraction. Hermes, unfazed, taps his chin theatrically. Can I influence it? At that, Iris actually sputters. You can feel the temperature drop. You're now watching the rarest of divine moments. A goddess of serenity and symbolism entering what ancient poets referred to as a mid-air breakdown. Her wings flap sharply. A gust of wind kicks up. Her nectar goblet shatters into a sparkle of suspended droplets, each one catching a sliver of rainbow and casting it sideways into the clouds. It's objectively beautiful. It's also terrifying. Do you think mortals need your name to find wonder in a rainbow? She demands. They look up, because the sky says look up, not because you told them to tap twice and follow. Hermes, oblivious to danger, actually begins sketching again. Ooh, tap twice and follow could be a slogan. You decide to slowly back away and position yourself behind a nearby marble column. You're not immortal, and Iris looks one flick away from turning this entire plateau into a prism-powered airstrike. Look, Hermes says, softening. I get it. You're proud. The rainbow's your gig, but think bigger. Iris, licensing, merchandising, myth-fluence. You and me. We could ride this thing to the stars. Maybe even get a line of sandals named after you. Iris wings team because you deserve the sky. There's a beat of silence. A single drop of shattered nectar lands on Hermes' nose, and then unbelievably, Iris laughs. It's short, sharp, hollow. The laugh of someone who's no longer sure if the argument is happening or if they've been transported into a performance art piece written by a drunk muse. She sighs. You know what your problem is. Only one. You think a rainbow is about you? It's not. It's what happens when you're not there. When you're just lucky enough to stand in the right spot at the right time, and light decides to throw a party you weren't invited to. Hermes actually pauses. The stylus stills in his hand. For a second, you wonder if he's getting it. If the god of commerce is starting to feel something dangerously close to humility, and then he snaps his fingers. Wait, what if we made it exclusive? Made what exclusive? The rainbow. What if we told mortals it only appeared for those who truly believed? We call it, wait for it, selective illumination TM. Scarcity builds value. This is when a small storm cloud possibly summoned by Iris, possibly just sentient weather, tired of eavesdropping drizzles directly onto Hermes' hair. To his credit, Hermes doesn't flinch. He brushes his curls back and continues. And think about this, mortals already think rainbows hide treasure. That's a built-in call to action. You mean leprechauns? Hermes waves dismissively. Regional folklore. We rebrand. Call it a Hermes drop. We launch a scavenger hunt across all 7 continents. The prize. Custom sandals, maybe a glowing tunic, and of course, exclusive rights to repost the rainbow. Repost the rainbow, exactly. You glance at Iris, her eye twitches slightly. You know, she says, voice now sugar-coated with doom. You are not even the first god to try this. Hermes blinks. I'm not. Nope. Apollo tried it once, claimed the rainbow only appeared because his sunlight was feeling expressive. Said it was a performance art piece. Then Poseidon argued that moisture was his intellectual property. It turned into a full-scale shouting match at the Aegean summit, ended with 5 drowned nymphs and a lawsuit that's still unresolved. You nod sagely. That sounds about right. Historians still argue. She continues. Whether the first legal precedent was established when Hera banned Aphrodite from using pink in her temple mosaics. Whoa. Hermes whistles. That's petty. Iris shrugs. That's Olympus. Another beat passes. This time, neither of them speaks. The rainbow continues to stretch gently across the sky, silent, unbranded, beautiful. Hermes sighs. So what you're saying is, no Hermes branded rainbow sandals. Iris raises a single warning brow. He grins. Fine. But what about a limited edition rainfall line, a mist that smells like dreams and looks like me? And just like that, her wings snap open again. You duck. You hear it before you see it. An echo of thunder laced with the unmistakable groan of divine bureaucracy waking up. Somewhere above the cloud line, Zeus has stretched, yawned, and rolled over, which, in Olympian terms, means the entire western sky just rumbled. Several columns cracked, and a minor weather god fell off his morning thundercloud latte stand. Hermes looks up. That's my cue. Iris, now dangerously composed again, narrows her eyes. You're not seriously taking this to him. Oh, I am. Hermes replies, rolling up his half-damp scroll. Zeus owes me one since I handled that whole misdelivered cow sacrifice to the wrong temple incident. You mean when you rerouted it to yourself? Details. You trail behind him as he zips toward the inner sanctum, Mount Olympus's top floor, where Zeus does all his ignoring. The architecture up here is mostly unnecessary columns, vast domes that echo dramatically, and statues of Zeus commissioned by Zeus for Zeus. His throne, cloud-draped, lion-footed, and surrounded by snack carts staffed by overqualified demigods. Hermes doesn't knock. He just glides in and plants the scroll like a contestant delivering a final answer. Zeus glances up from the game of Thunderbolt Solitaire. His beard is slightly tangled, and he's wearing the celestial equivalent of pajama robes, a toga covered in faded constellations. Let me guess, he mutters. Another petition. Hermes launches into his pitch. It's revolutionary, unifying, emotionally evocative. I call it the Hermes Rainbow Initiative. Exclusivity, brand engagement, color monetization across mortal realms. And I can't emphasize this enough, minimal maintenance. Rain does the work. I collect the vibes. Zeus sighs. Iris arrives just in time to watch him rub both temples with his knuckles like a god trying to erase the universe. Iris, Zeus says wearily. Do you know about this? She nods. I tried to stop him. She dropped a goblet. Zeus lifts the scroll with 2 fingers, holds it as if it might explode, and reads it. His expression shifts between disbelief and indigestion. Son, he says, looking at Hermes like he just tried to trademark gravity. You can't own light refraction. That's physics. Hermes shrugs. Physics is just divine infrastructure. Zeus's left eye twitches. Besides, Hermes adds, I'm not asking for the whole rainbow, just the midsection, the meaty bit. Between green and blue, that part really speaks to my aesthetic. You want to trademark 2 colors of a spectrum and name them. Hermes says, now pulling out swatches. I was thinking Hermotica and Brandigo. Iris coughs in protest. Zeus sighs so hard a tree dies in Crete. It's important to note here that Zeus hates paperwork. He loathes bureaucracy almost as much as he loves thunder-based declarations. Historians still argue whether the Olympian Council's rule of silence was implemented just to keep Hermes from pitching him 10 times a day. So Zeus does what he always does when he doesn't want to deal with something. He delegates. Hera handles intellectual property, he says, already turning back to his solitaire. File it with her. I'm out. Hermes grins. Triumphant. Iris stares in horror. You just exhale slowly and prepare yourself for the next level of Mount Olympus madness. You exit with Hermes as he practically moonwalks across a storm bridge toward Hera's palace stylus, twirling, sandals sparkling, dreams of rainbow-branded temples flickering behind his eyes. This is going well, he hums. Very well. You arrive at the gates of Hera's estate, a blinding structure made entirely of sculpted jealousy and white marble rage. Gold drips from every edge. Peacocks patrol the entrance like judgmental fashion editors. Hermes doesn't hesitate. He strolls in like he owns the place. You whisper a prayer to whoever handles divine insurance claims. Inside, Hera is precisely where you'd expect her on a throne flanked by ivy-wrapped columns, fingers laced, eyes sharp enough to cut thread from 3 timelines away. Hermes bows with excessive flair. O radiant queen, defender of oaths, mistress of divine legalese. Skip it. She interrupts. He does. I'd like to file a celestial trademark. Partial rainbow ownership, visual rights, and tonal overlap. She stares. Then, without a word, she produces a scroll already labeled Celestial Trademark Requests. Irritatingly creative department. She hands it to him. He blinks. It's pre-written. She nods. But how? You're the 5th god this century to try. Iris steps in behind him. And the most annoying, Hera waves a hand, conjuring a swarm of flying nymphs with tiny glasses and clipboards. Welcome, she announces, to the Celestial Trademark Office. Hermes gulps audibly. You stand frozen in the threshold of Hera's marble labyrinth of legal agony, the Celestial Trademark Office, watching Hermes' self-confidence wrinkle just slightly at the corners. The office is not what you expected. It's worse. Imagine a library, a courtroom, and a beehive all suffered a divine merger and were decorated exclusively by bitter interns. Scrolls spiral up columns. Clipboards float by of their own will. Paperwork flutters down from above like bureaucratic snow, and each page hums faintly with the low murmur of unreadable fine print. The nymphs sleek, stern, and visibly over it descend like pigeons to breadcrumbs. Each one carries a stylus, longer than your arm, and an expression that says you're about to regret breathing near a form. Name of petitioner. One asks flatly. Already scribbling. Hermes. He answers with charm turned up to 11. God of, please limit titles to 3. We're digitizing. He grins. Messenger. Commerce. And rainbow optimization. She pauses. That's not a domain. It could be. Another nymph swoops in and hands Hermes a form titled Form 27B, Request for Spectrum Ownership. Atmospheric Layer 25. It's 20 feet long and smells faintly of smug ink and time regret. You spot Iris behind you, arms crossed, watching this unfold with the quiet delight of someone about to witness an administrative train wreck. Hermes, to his credit, begins to fill out the form. He breezes through Section A, intent to monetize non-tangible phenomena. He nails Section B, prior claims of divinity-based aesthetic invention. But when he hits Section C, collaborative origin disputes, things get dicey. Because now, he has to list everyone who might have a claim to the rainbow, and that's a lot of people. First, there's Iris herself, obviously, but then he remembers Apollo, whose sunlight creates the base medium. Then Poseidon, who controls moisture and mist. Then there's Boreas, god of the north wind, who might technically be involved whenever clouds shift, not to mention Nyx, whose nightfall ends the possibility of rainbows entirely. So she also sort of has veto power. It's a mess. Historians still argue, Iris says, gliding past him, whether the rainbow was ever intended as property or if it was just a side effect of the gods refusing to collaborate on atmospheric design. Hermes shoots her a grin, and yet here we are. She says nothing, just pulls out her own scroll pre-inked, triple notarized, and gently places it atop his. It's titled Formal Objection to Visual Ownership of Meteorological Phenomena. Underneath, she's added a personal note. Seriously, stop! The nymph, reviewing both scrolls, hums in thought. This'll take at least 7 celestial days. Hermes raises an eyebrow. Business days or divine days? Neither. Hera days. Oh, yikes. Now, Hera herself finally speaks. She stands, all coiled power and elegant dread, her toga shimmering like mourning over fresh envy. Here's what I'll allow, she says, voice so and dangerous. You may proceed with a formal petition, but until arbitration, you are not to display, reproduce, reference, or scent brand any part of the visible spectrum. Scent brand. Iris echoes. Hermes mutters, I had ideas. Hera isn't done. You will also refrain from hosting symposiums, giving interviews, or organizing any unauthorized festivals involving color, mist, light, or feelings of vague hope. So, I'm grounded. You're on divine probation, she clarifies. A scroll magically slaps itself against his chest. It reads, Notice of pending trademark rejection with optional public embarrassment addendum. The peacocks hiss in satisfaction. Hermes finally sighs, shoulders sinking just a hair. So the answer's no. No, Harriet confirms, is not strong enough. The answer is absolutely, laughably, cosmically not. He turns to leave, dramatically slow. Fine. I'll just invent something else beautiful and confusing and unclaimable. Please don't, Iris mutters, but you can already see the gears turning. As Hermes passes the exit arch, he glances up at the ceiling, a dome of crystal that reflects the current sky. The rainbow is still there, undisturbed, diffused through the light like a memory trying to stay relevant. And you realize something subtle. Hermes isn't mad. He's motivated. Because rainbows may be off the table, but his mind is already chewing on something new, something bigger, something even harder to brand. Maybe feelings, maybe laughter, maybe the idea of almost falling asleep. You shudder. The gods are relentless. You trail Hermes out of the celestial trademark office as he mutters to himself, stylus tucked behind his ear, sandals slapping against the golden tile like a metronome for misguided ambition. Behind him, Hera's peacocks resume strutting, each one radiating smugness, while Iris vanishes into a dissolving beam of violet light, the rainbow above her already healing itself from the bureaucratic bruise it nearly suffered. Hermes pauses just outside the legal dome, staring at the sky like it owes him an apology. I still don't get why everyone's so territorial. He grumbles, it's just light behaving suspiciously. You don't reply. You're too busy trying to interpret his facial expression, which, to your mild horror, is sliding from defeated to inspired. And then he says it. You know who'd understand. Apollo. Your stomach drops. Hermes is already walking again, past a hydrangea bush, humming with forgotten spells, past a sculpture of Eros that someone's graffitied with lipstick hearts. Olympus is weird, like that half garden, half chaos, and just enough celestial energy in the air to make you feel like your skin might start glowing if you think too hard. He heads toward the golden portico of Apollo's palace, which, of course, is absurd. Sunlight streams from every window, harps play themselves in the foyer, columns hum in perfect pitch. Even the door handle glistens like it moisturizes your hand when touched. Hermes knocks with 2 sharp taps and no patience. A moment later, Apollo opens the door in a loosely draped tunic, sunglasses, and the unmistakable expression of a god who was in the middle of composing a 5-hour musical about shadows. Hermes, he says flatly. Why? Collaboration. Apollo blinks. That's either the most dangerous or most exhausting word I've heard this century. I need your sunlight. You could have just said hello. They move inside. Apollo's palace is extra. The floor is golden glass, reflecting the sun at just the right angle to force you to squint slightly, as if the whole room is trying to remind you it's fabulous. There are scrolls everywhere, symphonies, odas, half-written ballads that rhyme love with dove unironically. A bowl of glowing grapes hovers in the corner. Hermes wastes no time. So here's the pitch, he says, dropping onto a chaise made entirely of sunbeams. You provide the solar sparkle. I handle distribution. Think of it as light licensing. Apollo sips something that glows softly pink. Distribution to what? Hermes spreads his hands. Mortals, gods, influencers. I'm talking curated light moments. Hashtag blessed by Apollo. Maybe a branded sundial line. We create artificial scarcity and scarcity. Apollo snorts. I literally rise every day. Exactly. Too much availability, no sense of urgency. But what if sunrise wasn't guaranteed? You lean forward instinctively, because that sounds like a terrible idea. Apollo narrows his eyes. You're suggesting what? A solar delay. Maybe just for Tuesdays. Hermes offers, build anticipation. Apollo tosses a glowing grape into his mouth and chews slowly. You tried to brand the rainbow, didn't you? Hermes doesn't deny it. Apollo sighs, stands, and begins pacing. Hermes. Light isn't a product. It's a presence. It doesn't belong to anyone. Hermes leans in. That's what makes it perfect for branding. There's a long pause. Then Apollo does something unexpected. He grins. "Oh, I get it now," he says. "You don't want the rainbow. You want what the rainbow represents." Hermes blinks, which is the idea that something can be both everywhere and untouchable, that it can appear without warning and vanish without permission, that mortals will chase it even though they know it's not real. Hermes nods slowly. "So, marketing gold." Apollo chuckles. "Tragic. But yes." He gestures toward a window where light pools like syrup across the floor. "You know what we could do?" Hermes perks up. "We create an illusion, a light phenomenon that doesn't exist. Not a rainbow, not sunlight. Something entirely new. We introduce it subtly, one sighting at a time. Whispered myths, dream fragments. Eventually, mortals start looking for it. A hoax," Hermes says, delighted. "A legend." Apollo corrects. "We call it the gleam." You both freeze. That's not terrible. Historians still argue whether this conversation was the origin of a forgotten myth, known as the Gleam of Theros, a brief shimmer spotted only at dawn by poets about to give up and farmers who had no time for riddles. Some say it was an optical illusion caused by reflected dew. Others believe it was an elaborate prank orchestrated by Apollo and Hermes, complete with mirror clouds and whispered dreams planted in sleeping minds. But right now, it's just an idea. And ideas, on Olympus, are dangerous. Hermes stands. "We make it real, or at least real enough. You handle the light mechanics. I'll draft the narrative. Maybe throw in a prophecy or two." Apollo nods. "And we pretend we're not doing it." "Exactly." You exhale slowly. The rainbow may be safe, but now the gleam is coming. By the time you step outside Apollo's palace, the sky feels a little warmer. Not hotter, just more intentional, like it knows it's being watched. Hermes is practically vibrating. He's already sketching logos in the air with his finger, trails of golden shimmer following each swoop. "The gleam," he murmurs, as if he's trying the flavor of the word on his tongue. Not a rainbow, not a reflection, not a beam, just the gleam. Apollo trails behind him, rolling his eyes but not saying no. "And you're just trying to keep up without catching a case of secondhand hubris." Hermes claps his hands together. Step 1. Buzz. He squints up at a nearby passing breeze. Step 2. Subliminal marketing. The breeze whimpers. Hermes is already reaching for his stylus. What if we seed the gleam into mortal culture without direct sightings? Just rumors, bad pottery sketches, children's songs that almost rhyme. Something that'll make historians suspicious for centuries. Apollo smirks, muses. "You read my mind." You veer toward the outer edge of Olympus, where the air smells like inspiration and goat cheese, and everything rhymes accidentally. The muses live here, in a floating amphitheater made of fog and well-reviewed acoustics. The moment you approach, you hear arguing two muses locked in a passionate debate over whether metaphor is theft or flattery. Hermes announces his arrival by pirouetting into the center. "Ladies, gentlemen, ambiguous spirits of metaphor, I have a concept." A silence falls. Then Thalia, muse of comedy, sighs. "Again." He nods. "I need your help launching a myth." Calliope, the muse of epic poetry, raises a bored eyebrow. "Did the rainbow thing fail already?" Hermes twirls his stylus. "No failure. Just a pivot. We're inventing something new. The gleam." Erato leans forward, intrigued. "What's it do?" "That's the thing," Hermes says. "No one knows. It might not even exist. It appears to only the worthy or the forgetful. Maybe it reflects a part of the soul. Maybe it burns slightly. We're still in early development." Cleo, the historian of the group, narrows her eyes. "You're inventing something deliberately vague and unverifiable to drive mortal obsession and generate word-of-mouth curiosity across centuries." Hermes beams. "Exactly. There's a beat." Then the muses shriek with delight. "You'll need ballads," says Euterpe. "Symbolism," adds Polyhymnia, something circular but mysterious. "I'll write the tragic version," says Melpomene, already weeping into a draft. Historians still argue, Cleo intones, already planning the posthumous academic drama. Whether the gleam was an actual phenomenon or a poetic device created by high-altitude hallucinations. Hermes bows. Perfect. Make it sound plausible. The muses descend into creative chaos, quills flying, scrolls unfurling, abstract nouns mutating. You see one of them sketch a diagram involving a goat, a mirror, and a sunrise over Crete. Another chants a refrain that's both haunting and oddly catchy. Someone lights incense shaped like regret. Apollo, now leaning against a cloud pillar, mutters, "This is either going to end in glory or complete mythological collapse. Can't it be both?" Hermes asks, the muse of dance pirouettes past with a bowl of metaphor soup. It smells like nostalgia and unsent text messages. Now, Hermes returns to step 3 of his plans, distribution. We seed it into dreams first. He explains to no one and everyone. The gleam shows up in the background, at the corner of the eye, maybe reflected in puddles. We need ambiguity. And what's the purpose of the gleam? One muse asks. Hermes shrugs. Whatever the mortal wants it to be. Hope, regret, a sign from a lost god, the spot where a secret is buried. We make it the most personal myth ever. No two stories alike. Won't that backfire? Apollo asks. Hermes' eyes gleam. Only if it succeeds. So begins the campaign. Over the next few hours, the muses leak ballads into mortal songbooks. One fragment of a poem is buried in a Corinthian grave. A riddle involving the gleam is scratched onto a temple wall in a dialect that hasn't been spoken in centuries. Someone invents a dance that ends with everyone looking left suddenly, as if something just flashed. Hermes, naturally, coins a tagline, "The Gleam." You'll know it when you don't see it. Apollo plays a few shimmering chords on his lyre. The light over the horizon bends, just slightly. And then, for the briefest moment on a hill outside Thebes, a shepherd looks up. He swears he saw something shimmer, just once, in the mist. A flicker, maybe, maybe not. He blinks, it's gone. But now he believes. By now, the gleam has officially entered mortal rumor circulation, which is a terrifying thing to watch unfold in real time, especially when you realize just how little effort it takes to create a full-blown phenomenon from a half-sketched concept and an enthusiastic group of attention-starved immortals. Hermes is thriving. He's launched a whisper campaign. Literally, he's enchanted. A few breezes to murmur hints of the gleam in crowded marketplaces and on mountaintops where goats pretend not to listen. One swirl of wind in Delphi even sighed, "It glows for those who forget their names," before knocking over a cart of olives. Apollo, meanwhile, has subtly adjusted the way sunlight bends over specific valleys. Not enough to cause alarm, just enough for a handful of poets to start mumbling about strange light at dawn. And now it's time to deal with Poseidon. Because if there's one thing the gleam depends on, it's moisture. Mist, sea spray, cloud droplets, anything with enough tiny particles to catch the manipulated light and bounce it in a way that makes someone squint and gasp and swear they saw something. You follow Hermes down to the edge of Olympus, where the sky turns from soft blue into a wall of rumbling gray. There, right at the mist line, stands a staircase made of seawater liquid. One moment, solid, the next, slapping upward in rhythm with some ancient ocean chant. Poseidon's domain, Hermes says, already barefoot. Don't say anything about shrimp. He's sensitive. You descend into the deep blue corridors of the god of the sea. Poseidon's throne room is, in a word, damp. Shells crunch underfoot. Eels coil around glowing pillars. The smell is a heady mix of salt, old anchors, and unspoken grudges. At the center, Poseidon lounges across a reef throne in full regal pout. He's shirtless, glistening, and clearly not in the mood. He looks up with the expression of a man who's about to be asked for a favor and is already saying no. Hermes, "Uncle, I'm busy." You're holding a fish like a scroll. Poseidon scowls. "It's a legal haddock. Don't distract me." Hermes doesn't flinch. "I need a little moisture. I swear to the sea foam gods if this is about bottling my waves again." No. Hermes waves him off. "This is bigger. We're crafting a new phenomenon. An ambient shimmer, something to haunt mortal memory without leaving fingerprints." Poseidon blinks. "A shimmer. We're calling it the gleam. I hate it." "You don't know what it is yet." "I still hate it." Hermes leans closer, hands steepled. All I'm asking is for a little mist. Nothing major, just the occasional fog where sunlight can play. I'll credit the oceans as co-sponsor. Poseidon snorts. Co-sponsor, like some kind of mythical weather collab. Exactly. Poseidon mutters something that sounds like, "This is why I avoid brunches with gods who wear eyeliner," but waves his hand regardless. A small orb of seawater rises from the ground, swirls, and explodes into a fine, glimmering mist. "There," he says, one licensed batch of shimmer-supporting haze. No branding, no slogans, no sandals. Hermes bows. "You are truly the moistest of monarchs. Your band." You always say that. You exit the throne room with Poseidon's fog swirling gently around your ankles. Hermes is already plotting distribution. Fog banks and mountain passes, misty mornings over vineyards, maybe even a few unexpected oceanfront hallucinations. Back on Olympus, the muses have started inserting the gleam into prophecies. The one who walks east at dawn may see it, sings one, or may stub their toe, adds another. Calliope pens a poem in which the gleam appears only to lovers separated by war or taxes. Clio, ever the historian, starts creating conflicting records. One papyrus says the gleam was last seen over Troy. Another insists it never existed at all and was just an elaborate shadow cast by Helios's poorly parked chariot. Historians still argue whether the conflicting documentation around the gleam was a deliberate ploy or just a byproduct of too many immortals trying to edit the same scroll at once. Meanwhile, Hermes distributes tiny tokens to mortals. Nothing dramatic. A spoon that gleams strangely, a pendant that seems to change color at twilight, a puddle that refuses to reflect anything clearly, unless you squint sideways and hum. He calls them gleamlets, Tim. Apollo disapproves. Poseidon refuses to comment. And yet, in the mortal world, the gleam begins to take root. Shepherds see it. Dreamers dream of it. One child in Thessaly swears she saw her grandmother's smile floating above the river, refracted in a color she couldn't name. A temple is built, not large, just a small hilltop shelter where people leave offerings of broken mirrors and soft blue cloth. And outside it, someone has carved into the stone. It flickered, and then it didn't. But I still remember Hermes grins when he sees it. "This," he says, "is better than a trademark." It's early morning on Olympus, if you can call any time early in a realm where the sun is on artistic retainer, and you find yourself following Hermes back through the garden of half-formed ideas. It's a quiet patch of divine land where unfinished myths sprout like weeds and abandoned prophecies linger in the air like perfume someone forgot they were wearing. Hermes is chipper, suspiciously so. He's holding a gleaming bronze scroll tube, engraved with a new logo, a single streak of curved light, arcing gently across the top like a smile that knows something you don't. "I call it," he says dramatically, "the Gleam Registry." You pause. Registry. Yes, not ownership. That was too aggressive, too rainbow. This is gentler, more poetic. I'm not claiming the gleam. I'm simply offering a central location for people to report it. He points at the scroll tube. Every sighting, every poem, every sketch, logged and preserved. You arch a brow, so. Crowdsourced myth-making. He beams. Exactly. You pass the statue of Hypnos, the sleep god who snores softly with a pigeon perched on his nose. Hermes salutes him, not stealing your thunder, old friend, just dimming a few lights. The registry, as it turns out, is a scroll enchanted by one of the quieter muses. It accepts anything written in belief, not ink belief. Mortals can write in dirt, or whisper into water, or burn a stick in a certain pattern. And if they truly mean it, their gleam story gets logged, which, from a legal standpoint, is chaos. From a mythic standpoint, it's brilliant. Already the registry is filling with strangeness. A sailor who saw the gleam in the glint of a whale's eye, a weaver who dreamed of a loom threaded with light, each thread a voice she forgot she knew, a child who drew a rainbow, crumpled it, and saw the gleam in the wrinkles. None of them agree on what it is, which is the whole point, but not everyone's impressed. You find Athena waiting at the central pillar of the agora, arms crossed, owl glaring. She's holding a scroll labeled Objection to Mythic Ambiguity in Shared Divine Domains. "Let me guess," Hermes says, already smiling. You don't like it. I don't understand it, she replies. And worse, it works. She gestures toward a pair of mortals below, lighting candles at a temple that didn't exist last week. One of them holds a mirror. The other whispers into it. They're invoking a thing they can't define, she says. A godless fragment. It's inefficient. Hermes, unfazed, replies. It's not a godless fragment. It's a faith loop. A self-generating symbol. The less they understand, the more they believe. Athena sighs the sigh of someone too logical to enjoy marketing. Historians still argue, she mutters, whether the rise of gleam cults was a spiritual awakening or just an ancient case of mass photonic confusion. Hermes shrugs. Why not both? He hands her a small trinket. It's a glass bead, clear at first glance, but when she turns it, light dances through it in a way that isn't quite natural. Athena frowns. Is it enchanted? Nope. Hermes says, just well polished. But you thought it might be. That's the gleam. He walks off, leaving her staring at the bead, silently and perhaps reluctantly admiring the strategy. Back near the registry, Iris reappears. She hasn't spoken to Hermes since the failed rainbow patent incident, but today, her face is calmer. She walks up beside him, glancing at the scroll tube. So, this is what you replaced my rainbow with? Replaced, he echoes. No, yours is still the original. This is just a cousin, something gentler, less defined, a mirror in motion. She studies him. And who does it belong to? Hermes meets her eyes. Whoever needs it. For a second, she almost smiles. Clever, she says. Dangerous. He bows. My specialty. And then, without another word, she rises into the air and vanishes, leaving only the faintest shimmer behind, one that catches the sunlight just so. You look at Hermes. He's watching the sky, smiling, because the gleam isn't just spreading, it's sticking. You find Hermes reclined beneath a eucalyptus tree someone imported from mortal lands without asking, flipping through pages of the gleam registry like it's a gossip scroll. His sandals are off, one toe lazily circling in the air, and beside him sits a half-eaten pomegranate filled with metaphor and bad ideas. Listen to this one, he says, holding up a page. Saw the gleam in my mother's eyes when she forgave me. Light bent in the shape of her old lullaby. He sniffs, clearly moved. That one's getting a gold stamp. You sit beside him, watching as more registry entries drift down from the sky like feathered ideas. Each scroll unfurls midair, gets its moment of drama, then tucks neatly into the ever-growing spiral archive beside him. Some are written in verse, some in smudged charcoal sketches. One is just a drawing of a frog with a tiny shimmer painted behind it, and somehow it makes perfect sense. Across Olympus, the gleam's influence has taken a strange and sleepy hold. It's not loud, not warlike. It's just there, humming at the edges of things. You pass a nymph carving a gleam-inspired poem into a fig tree. You see two minor gods comparing dream fragments that may or may not include a vision of light that whisper their real names. Even a mortal bard, granted temporary access to Olympus through a loophole involving wine, has started composing something called Ballad of the Light That Almost Was. And yet, not everyone is thrilled. A familiar clap of sandals behind you signals the approach of Ares, god of war and biceps. He's wearing his casual armor bare chest, cape dramatically windswept for no reason, and an expression that says someone's joy is about to be interrogated. What is this? He growls, gesturing to the registry tower. Hermes doesn't look up. A story you're not in. Ares snorts. Is it even real? Hermes gestures toward the horizon. What is? That answer doesn't help. Ares stares at the archive with the intensity of someone trying to arm wrestle an emotion. Mortals are talking about us. They're distracted. There's supposed to be a minor skirmish in Thessaly this week. Half the warriors are stargazing. Hermes shrugs. So give them something worth fighting for. What's more motivating than chasing a light that means something? Victory. Ares replies flatly. Boring. Hermes counters. Ares crosses his arms. Is it a weapon? No. Can it become one? Not directly. Then what's the point? Hermes finally looks at him. The gleam isn't a sword, Ares. It's the reason you sheath it. For once, Ares doesn't have a snappy retort. He grunts and stomps off, muttering something about stupid light cults and weaponizing mist. You laugh softly, but Hermes' face turns thoughtful. There's power in the ambiguous, he says, mostly to himself. It gets under your skin, makes you wonder, makes you search. He rolls up another scroll. You give mortals something concrete. They worship it once. Give them something elusive and they build temples forever. At that moment, a tiny mortal girl appears. She's maybe 7, eyes wide, holding what looks like a small jar of water. Inside it, just barely visible, is a shimmer. Hermes kneels. What do you have there? I saw the gleam, she whispers. In the puddle next to my brother's grave, I caught a piece. He takes the jar carefully, studies it. It's just water, or maybe not. He nods solemnly. You did well. She beams and runs off. You both watch her disappear. See, he says, you don't need to own something to make it sacred. Just then, the wind changes. From the west, a rumble. Not thunder, not quite. It's Hades. Because when something starts pulling mortal souls toward light, even the god of the underworld pays attention. And he's not coming to join the registry. He's coming to question it. You feel the shift before you see him. The air around Olympus grows heavier, thicker, like wet parchment sagging under too many secrets. The sky doesn't darken, exactly, but the light becomes less casual, like it knows someone just arrived who reads shadows better than poems. Then, like a sigh from the earth's ribs, Hades steps forward. No grand entrance, no thunderclap, just a quiet crunch of bone-dry olive leaves as he emerges from a dark slit in the stone, trailed by a thin mist that smells like cold marble and half-forgotten names. He's tall, tired, impeccably dressed in black robes threaded with something darker than black. And in his hands, of course, is a scroll. Hermes immediately sits up straighter. Uncle, Hades doesn't blink. You're bending light into a superstition. It's more of an emotional lens. Hermes replies, smiling way too wide. Hades sighs. I left you all alone for 6 years, and this is what I come back to. Whisper cults, dream riddles, shepherds trying to bottle air. You stay quiet. Even the peacocks in Hera's garden seem to be holding their breath. Hades steps toward the gleam registry. The scrolls flutter uneasily, like they know he's not just here to file a request. He touches the bronze tube gently, then says, it's working. Hermes beams. You think so? I didn't say that with approval. Hades turns, robes dragging like forgotten memories. You're doing something dangerous, he says, voice as steady as a sealed tomb. You're making people hope without a shape, mourn without a face. They're seeing the gleam when they should be grieving. Hermes tilts his head. Grief and wonder aren't enemies. No, Hades replies, but they live on separate floors. He gestures behind him, and the ground splits. A fissure opens in the marble path, not violently, just intentionally. From it rises a scene, a mortal funeral, happening right now. A boy is being buried. His mother weeps. A sister stares up at the sky and says, he's in the gleam now. Hades looks at Hermes. You see what's happening? I see faith. Hermes answers softly. You see misdirection. Or maybe, Hermes counters, I see a light you can't trap in stone. There's a beat. Not angry, disappointed. Which, somehow, stings worse. Hades doesn't yell. He doesn't threaten. He simply opens his own scroll and reads from it. Slow and precise. Clause 9, line 3. No divine being shall create or endorse a phenomenon which blurs the boundaries between mortality and myth without proper underworld review. Hermes squints. Was that always in the charter? No, Hades says. I added it 5 minutes ago. I'm retroactive. You glance toward Apollo, who's just arrived, strumming awkwardly at a harp like a teen caught in a family argument. This isn't just Hermes, he says. I helped bend the light. I know. Hades replies, you'll be dealt with later. Apollo pauses. Define dealt. Hades waves a hand. Later. Hermes steps forward. If you're here to shut it down, I'm not. That stops everyone. I don't want to destroy the gleam, Hades says, and for the first time, you hear something odd in his voice. Fatigue. I just want it named, defined, labeled, so mortals stop using it to skip grief like it's a cue line. He touches another scroll in the registry. It bursts into ash. I won't ban the gleam, he says, but I will require parameters. Hermes frowns. Like what? Location, time frame, emotional category. No appearing near graves without my consent. You want permissions. Of course. Hades says, you opened the floodgates. Now you contain the water. Apollo whispers, technically Poseidon should. Later, Hermes glances at the registry, then back at Hades. What if I said no? I'd bury it. The gleam. The belief. There's a long silence. Even the clouds stop drifting. Then, finally, Hermes sighs. Fine, he says. I'll file the parameters. I'll give it a mood board. A seasonal release cycle, a list of approved emotions. Hades nods, and a disclaimer. Hermes winces. Fine. The gleam is not a guarantee of afterlife comfort. Thank you. As Hades turns to leave, he pauses. You know, the last time a god tried something like this, it was Mnemosyne, the goddess of memory. You ask? He nods. She made a well, called it truth. Mortals stared into it and saw what they wanted, not what was there. What happened? Hades smiles faintly. They called it prophecy, and then they blamed her when it didn't come true. He disappears into shadow, leaving behind the faintest shimmer just barely visible in the air he left behind. A gleam, or maybe not. Hermes watches the place where Hades vanished, tapping his stylus against his chin like he's not sure whether he just survived a threat or received a compliment. Behind him, the registry flutters as if exhaling for the first time. That, he says slowly, could have gone worse. You glance at the scrolls. He deleted an entire entry. He also gave me a deadline instead of a death sentence. Hermes counters, progress, Apollo. Still leaning awkwardly with his harp, adds, I thought he was surprisingly gentle. For someone who once turned a soul cue into a maze out of spite, Hermes pulls a scroll from thin air. All right, let's do this before he changes his mind. He scribbles a header, the gleam manifest. You peek over his shoulder as he writes, may not appear in graveyards without underworld review. Must avoid impersonating deceased relatives. Cannot cause tears in time, unless pre-approved for symbolic reasons. Not responsible for emotional clarity. Must appear subtly, through mist, reflective surfaces, or emotionally vulnerable puddles. Apollo raises a hand. Can we add something about tone? Tone. Like, gleam should never appear with circus music. Kills the vibe. Hermes adds it, then pauses. Should we categorize types of gleam? What? Like a catalog? Yeah. Gleam A, wistful. Gleam B, romantic regret. Gleam C, end of movie montage energy. You laugh because it's not a joke. Hermes is completely serious. Meanwhile, the muses are back. Thalia cartwheels into view holding a scroll labeled approved gleam metaphors. Similes are fine. She says, but anything involving like spilled moonlight has to be cleared. Erato holds up a parchment labeled Forbidden Gleam Haikus, with only one entry under it so far. I saw the gleam once, but it turned into taxes. Now I hate poetry. Unacceptable, she mutters. We have standards. Calliope insists all gleam mentions in epic poetry must include at least one tragic decision, preferably involving rain. Cleo begins documenting the entire argument for historical continuity. Even as she mumbles, historians still argue whether this was the most creatively unregulated divine initiative since Dionysus tried to trademark laughter. You look around, the registry's growing, slowly, carefully, but now, legally. A new scroll arrives from a mortal in Thrace. It describes the gleam appearing in a silver goblet, moments before a wedding toast. The witness says it reminded her of everything she forgot to say to her mother. Hermes reads it, then seals it with a soft hum. This one gets archived in the bittersweet category. Apollo raises an eyebrow. We have categories. We do now. Another entry arrives. A boy claims to have seen the gleam inside the eye of a donkey right before it sneezed. That's gleam typey. Hermes says, surreal but tender. You blink. You're making this up as you go, aren't you? He grins. Isn't that the point? And it hits you. The gleam isn't just an invention. It's a sandbox, a vessel, a reflective playground for everything mortals can't quite explain. It doesn't need to be real. It just needs to feel like it might be. By sunset, temples are already adjusting. One now includes a small mirror basin labeled in case of gleam. Stare softly. Another installs a wind chime tuned to D minor, the most emotionally ambivalent key. You pass an oracle muttering, it came to me in a puddle shaped like my childhood. I stepped in it. I think I'm enlightened now. Hermes claps. We're trending. But not all reactions are reverent. A minor harvest god holds up a sign that reads, "If you see the gleam, you're dehydrated." A group of philosophers argue loudly over whether the gleam disproves causality or just poetry. One philosopher stands up, shouts, "Light has no ethics," and is immediately struck by a falling lyre. "Thanks, Apollo," Hermes mutters. Apollo shrugs, just keeping standards high. Later, as Olympus dims into golden twilight, you and Hermes sit quietly beneath the same eucalyptus tree from earlier. He holds up a mirror, just a plain one. No shimmer, no strange glow, just his reflection. He stares at it for a moment, then turns it to you. "Sometimes," he says, "the gleam is just a mirror held when no one's looking, and in that moment you think you see it, or maybe you imagined it." Which is exactly what Hermes was counting on. You wake up not from sleep, but from that drifty, golden haze of late Olympian afternoon, where everything smells like warmed ambrosia and forgotten deadlines, and Hermes is gone. No note, no trail of glitter, just a faint breeze that seems to hum an iambic pentameter. You follow it through the agora, past a cloud sculpting contest currently judging a suspiciously suggestive unicorn, and into the echo hall, a cavernous dome where every sound is repeated, but only the ones with unresolved feelings. And there he is, Hermes, standing in the center, eyes closed, hands raised, as hundreds of voices, mortal voices, whisper around him. The gleam came when she smiled, and I forgave her. It was on the window pane after the storm, just hovering there. I think it flickered in my tea, or maybe my tears. He's listening, not curating, not judging, listening. When he finally opens his eyes, he looks older, not aged, just more aware, as if the weight of belief is both lighter and heavier than he expected. You step up beside him. Didn't think it would get this big, did you? He chuckles. Honestly, I thought it'd max out at one cult and a commemorative fountain. You both watch a sound spiral upward. A whisper from a bard in Syracuse who saw the gleam in his lover's laugh. The air carries it gently, then tucks it into the registry. Then Hermes turns, a little too casual, and says, "I've been thinking about letting it go." You blink. What? Handing it off, stepping back, removing the divine scaffolding and just letting it drift. He walks slowly now, tracing a spiral with his finger in the dust. When I started this, it was about ownership. Then it was about cleverness, then influence. Then it became something I couldn't name. You watch as he pulls out one last scroll. It's blank. Maybe the gleam was never meant to be a thing we control, he says. Maybe it was supposed to be the thing they needed. A space where gods don't meddle, where something undefined can be sacred. You hear footsteps behind you. Iris, wings folded, face unreadable. Hermes doesn't flinch. You win, he says softly. She tilts her head. Wasn't a contest. I know, that's what makes it worse. They smile at each other. Two messengers, two light bearers, two pieces of the same divine alphabet. Then, in one smooth motion, Hermes hands her the scroll. Guard it, or don't. Maybe just let it live. She accepts it, surprisingly gentle. Then she vanishes in a blur of violet and gold. Hermes sighs. I think, he says, I'm finally done trying to own the unownable. You walk with him back through the garden of half-formed ideas. It's quieter now, softer. A breeze nudges a statue of Persephone that was never finished. A fig tree drops a single fruit. Hermes pauses beneath the branches. He pulls out one last trinket from his satchel. It's a prism, small, cracked, maybe broken, maybe perfect. He holds it up to the fading light, and for a second, just a second, you see it, a flicker, not bright, not flashy, just there, and then gone. Hermes lowers the prism. That, he says, smiling faintly, was for me. Olympus feels quiet. Not the absence of sound kind of quiet, but the kind that comes after a story ends. Yet no one has decided whether to clap or cry. The kind of silence you get when something sacred has slipped through your fingers, but not in a bad way. More like a passing breeze that never planned to stay. Just drifted through to remind you that the sky is still mysterious. You sit beneath the fig tree as Hermes disappears into the mid-distance. Stylus tucked behind his ear again, humming some mortal song he's probably about to claim he invented. He doesn't look back, which is probably the most Hermes thing he's ever done. You glance up, The sky is cloudless, no rainbow, no shimmer, not even a suspicious halo or a poetic mist bank drifting suspiciously near an amphora shop. But still, you feel something. And then, behind you, a familiar rustle, the muses. They enter like a procession of unbothered wind chimes, scrolls under arms, eyes half-lidded with that serene smugness only artists and cats possess. Thalia's twirling a lyre like a baton. Irato hums a tune that may or may not cause spontaneous weeping. Calliope stops in front of you and says simply, "It worked." You raise an eyebrow. The gleam. "No," she replies, the idea that something can matter without making sense. Melpomene dabs her eyes dramatically. Even the sad ones believe in it. You're not sure if she means mortals or gods. Cleo steps forward and hands you a sealed scroll. It's labeled, "The Gleam, Final Entry." The question mark is deliberate. Inside, it contains a simple poem. It came once at dusk. In the quiet behind thunder, no one saw it leave. That's all. You tuck the scroll under your arm and look out at the mortal world below. Tiny temples dot the landscape. Some are shaped like eyes, some like broken cups. One just looks like a flat rock where people leave mirrors and then walk away. The cults haven't faded, Cleo says. They've adapted. One town only allows gleam sightings on Tuesdays, under strict philosophical debate. Another celebrates the gleaming, a yearly festival where no one speaks and everyone lights candles behind half-open windows. A philosopher in Athens insists the gleam is proof of divine recursion. A drunk in Corinth insists it's the reflection off his wine jug. Historians still argue whether the gleam ever existed at all, or if it was just the gods. Yet again, giving mortals a beautiful lie and hoping they'd turn it into truth. You feel a soft tap at your shoulder. It's Athena, surprisingly casual today, helmet off. Owl perched lightly on her wrist. She says nothing, just hands you a single page. It's a new law, written in clean, brutal ink. Clause 1. The gleam is not subject to ownership, worship, denial, or consensus. It may appear or not appear without warning. Clause 2. No divine being shall exploit, monetize, distort, or explain the gleam. Clause 3. If mortals believe it, it is real enough. Let them have that. You smile. Then you hear a soft melody. Apollo stands at the edge of the hill, playing a quiet tune on his lyre. Not a song of conquest or prophecy, but something small, delicate, like a lullaby left behind in an echo chamber. He finishes and walks over, nodding to the scroll in your hand. You think it'll last? You glance at the sky, then at the empty spot where the registry once stood, then back to him, only if they forget who started it. He smiles faintly. Then it has a chance. And as the stars begin to press gently into the folds of night, you finally rise. You don't see the gleam, but you don't need to. You've already carried it. And now, you descend, not from Olympus, exactly, but from that half-dream space between myth and memory, where gods build metaphors like furniture and mortals furnish them with meaning. You drift, slowly, gently, into the hush between stories. The gleam no longer needs its registry, or its registry keeper, or its divine marketing campaign. Thank you very much. It has escaped the scrolls, the temples, the prayers. It has leaked into puddles, into glances, into the strange comfort people feel when a shaft of light cuts through a dusty room just right. You can't predict it anymore, because prediction implies design. The gleam was born from design. It lives now in accident. Somewhere in a quiet fishing village, a girl sees the gleam in a tide pool and names her daughter after it. In a crowded market, a man selling figs looks into a bent spoon and forgets why he was angry. A painter smears gold across a canvas, then stops, tears in his eyes, because it finally looks like something he lost long ago. No one calls it a miracle. They don't even agree it happened. And that's exactly the point. Back on Olympus, the gods have stopped arguing, or rather, they've moved on to other arguments. Ares is protesting the new No Gleams in War Zones clause. Dionysus is trying to launch a wine label called Gleaming Red. Even Hera has started a side project, Divine Emotion. Licensing. But Hermes, you haven't seen him since that day under the fig tree. Some say he left Olympus for a while, traveling incognito among mortals, planting rumors, listening for echoes. Some say he vanished altogether, leaving behind only a trail of polished stones that shimmer when no one's looking. Others say he is the gleam now. They say that in the moments between moments when something flickers, and your breath catches, and your memory stutters just enough to ask, was that something? That's him, nudging, reminding, not claiming, just being, and if you see it, if you feel it, you won't shout, or bow, or write an ode. You'll smile softly and go quiet because something fragile just passed through you, something holy, something light. So now we let it fade, not disappear, not vanish, just ease out of focus. You're safe now, wrapped in the soft murmur of starlight and slow breath. Let your body melt into the weight of the mattress. Your fingers loosen, your jaw unclench. Let the gleam, whatever it means to you, slip beneath your ribs and settle. There's no need to hold it, no need to explain it. Like a good myth, it never belonged to any one god or any one moment. It just showed up when it was needed. And maybe right now, that's all you needed too. So close your eyes. The light's still there, just softer, slower, gentler, and very, very quiet.